Just before we start the video, as another introduction thing, I'd just like to say that I'm going to be talking, but there's going to be me playing CK3 in the background to keep you. Well, of course, my content is entertaining. Of course, you guys like it, but that's just to keep, some stimulation. Hi guys, welcome back to History with Heath, and today I'm going to be looking at Manichaeism, yeah? And I know for a fact that I have talked about Manichaeism before, but I've kind of just, assumed that most of my viewers are probably learned enough to know what Manichaeism is about and stuff. But I thought I might as well just make a video on it, just in case, well, people don't, because I don't really want to assume. Anyway, just before we start, I want to give a big shout out to all the Manichaeans watching this video, because of course you guys survived through Chinese Manichaeism, but also there are lots of modern Manichaeists who've practiced the old mainstream Manichaeism, which did die out. But yeah, in China, if any Chinese people from Yunnan listening to this, well, not Yunnan, I forgot where it is, but Kaoan Temple, yeah? That's where the Chinese Manichaeans survived, so yeah, shout out to them. Also, shout out to the Manichaeists, because even though you are technically a heretical Buddhist group, you guys also were influenced by Manichaeism, so shout out to you guys as well. Anyway, let's start. So, Manichaeism, of course. Oh yeah, just by the way, just before we start, since Manichaeism does survive, I'm going to be using present tense pronouns. Anyway, so let's start. Sorry about that little interlude. Anyway, Manichaeism is a universalist, dualistic. That's a very big part of it. It's a dualistic faith that was founded by the Persian prophet Mani in the third century. Well, of course, in Persia, and over the centuries, it spread into Eurasia, especially Sogdiana, Scythia, China, the Middle East, of course. It did spread into Europe, but didn't really do that well, especially since it competed with Christianity. But it's often called the first world religion because it spread along the Silk Road. It's called the Silk Road Faith by many. So it's great at spreading. So the Prophet Mani was born in the year 216 to a Jewish Christian family, a ecclesiarch family, and if you don't know that, I'm pretty sure that's a Gnostic group. Yeah, a Jewish Jewish Christian Gnostic group. And if you don't already know, the Jewish Christians were a group that still practiced the Jewish laws even after Jesus, and they didn't believe Jesus was the Son of God or God Himself. They just believed that Jesus was the Messiah, and that they still practiced Jewish laws and identified as Jewish people. Anyway, he grew up in this sect that believed in Jesus not as God but just as a prophet, and he grew in the Sasanian Empire, which of course was predominantly Zoroastrian, and I believe it was Zervanist specifically. And he apparently had divine revelations where he realized he was the final prophet in a lineage that included Lord Buddha, Zoroaster, and Jesus, and he intended to sort of unify these major religions. The key beliefs of Manichaeism are radical dualism, like the universe is this battleground between the light and the dark, the good and the evil. And this is almost like a cosmic drama. And he taught how they've been separated since primordial times, like light and dark are two opposing forces. And of course, as you probably already taken in, this is of course from influenced by Zoroastrianism. This idea of evil and good, Ahura Mazda and Aharam. Well, in Manichaeism, God isn't called that. Anyway, and he also he also mentioned how there will be a final battle at the end of time, and how light will battle dark. And I'm not entirely sure on this, but I don't think he said that light will win. I think it's sort of like free will kind of situation. Like I know there's lots of Manichaeans listening, like on the subreddit r/Manichaeism. This is a pretty good video just to tweet me on this, but I believe that he said that it's up to us humans to win against darkness. And he believed in, of course, well, Manichaeism is a Gnostic religion, so he believed in the main Gnostic idea that human souls are light beings that are trapped in this almost disgusting human body that is like the spirit is good, the body is bad. It's like the separation. Like the physical world is the creation of the evil demiurge. And well, in Manichaeism they're not called the demiurge, but in Christian, especially Christian Gnostic groups, that this evil god is called the demiurge, Yaldabaoth. And like I said, he said that he is the final of the prophets. He is all the other prophets. It's kind of like with Islam's view on Christianity and Judaism, that they came from Abraham, but they kind of went a bit heretical and kind of strayed off the path. And that's that was Mani's belief in that Buddhism, Christianity, Zoroastrianism have kind of strayed off the path. And Manichaeism, well, they don't have this now because, of course, Manichaeism is quite small today. But when they were in their prime, they had a proper structured church with the elect, who were the ascetic elite, the hearers, who were the lay followers, and of course a big hierarchy of apostles and bishops. Now let's look at the spread. I've already covered that a bit, but let's go into the deep thing. So, of course, Mani was Persian, so Persia is like the core starting point, and he was able to reach Egypt, North Africa, and Rome by the 4th century, and he influenced figures like Augustine, who converted to Christianity, because he was raised Christian, then converted to Manichaeism, but then went back to Christianity. And although they did do pretty well in the Roman Empire, when Christianity did become the main religion in the Roman Empire, it kind of just died out in Europe. It did even reach Britain, but mainly through Romans, and it never took hold between the actual Romano-British population. It was mainly soldiers in barracks who practiced Manichaeism. And of course, the main point is the eastward expansion, which was the one, well, where it still survives today. It reached China by the 7th century, maybe possibly earlier, especially Central Asia. You probably know about. Well, see, I play CK3, and you probably know, my fellow CK3 players probably know about what is it, Kurmazdism. Not Mazdaism, but Mazdaism, which is the Sogdian form of Zoroastrianism. I know Zoroastrianism isn't Manichaeism, but the Sogdian Manichaeism was like that. It was like the Mazd Manichaeism. And even though, of course, he took influence from Zoroastrianism, he was persecuted by Zoroastrian authorities, including he was executed by hanging, I believe, in 274 by the Sasanian emperor. And of course, that Roman emperors, especially the Christian ones, saw it as a very big foreign threat. And although it wasn't really present in Arabia at the point where Islam, like the rise of Islam, when the rise of Islam began, Manichaeism wasn't really present in the Middle East. But even through the tiny people, Islamic rulers saw it as very heretical. And there are lots of Chinese dynasties, both Taoist, just folk, and Buddhist, that did persecute it. And I'm going to get onto that later about the persecution matter. But around the year 1000, Manichaeism had largely disappeared outside of China. Now we're going to talk about how Manichaeism survives today. And yes, don't get mad at me, the mainstream Manichaeans. But what I'm trying to talk about is you guys are the revivalists of the mainstream Manichaeism, not the Chinese Manichaeism. Because although I don't think it was a proper, like, you are heretical kind of thing, but technically Chinese Manichaeism is a bit heretical compared to mainstream Manichaeism. Although I know you guys probably respect your Chinese Manichaean counterparts. But anyway, Chinese Manichaeism in Chinese is called Moni Jiao or Ming Jiao. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but that means religion of light. And it was, of course, like I said, it was the most enduring branch of Manichaeism. And it became, like I said, deeply Sinicized, adapting to Chinese folk beliefs, Taoism, Buddhism, just the language and the religious concepts that were surrounding it. And like I said, it was introduced in the Silk Road around the 7th century, and it's first recorded in 694, although earlier contact is very probable. And there was ministries such as Mir Ordmast, who reportedly presented Manichaean texts to Empress Wu Zetian, who was Buddhist. Chinese Manichaeism, of course, kind of they're still Manichaean, but they adopted lots of this ideas, like they called money the Buddha of light, and they of course had this Confucian and Taoist concepts, and they focused on awakening. So they kind of took this idea of salvation and reaching your true spirit self, and they kind of took this into this being awakening. Like, this is what I mean, how it's kind of heretical, in that they kind of replace some mainstream Manichaean concepts with Buddhist and Taoist and Confucian concepts. But of course, Chinese Manichaeism still had the main stuff, the dualism, the light versus dark, and in mainstream Manichaeism, God is called the Father of Greatness, but in the specific Chinese Manichaeism, he was called Shangdi, which is of course also the name in the Chinese folk religion, but he was also called Zaisen, which is true God. And they believe that salvation came through the living spirit, just as I said, manifested in the prophets, like money. Despite its repeated persecutions, Chinese Manichaeism has survived into the modern times in places around Fujian. Yeah, that's where it's not Yunnan, Fujian. Fujian and Zhejiang, where rituals and texts have been preserved and are still practiced by folk, by, of course, villagers, although they are extremely Buddhicized. Now let's go on to the actual. I've already covered this, but the way it was, like I said, it schismed a bit, is that Chinese texts sort of replaced these Syriac scriptures and greater emphasis on the Buddhist style enlightenment, like I said. Anyway, although Manichaeism survives today in Chinese Manichaeism and mainstream Manichaean revivalists, there is also Manichaeism, which split off from Chinese Manichaeism. But since it's a Buddhist sect, most people wouldn't consider Manichaeists as also the successors of Manichaeans. And you probably already know that Manichaeism is based on the idea of Buddha Maitreya. And of course, I'm a Buddhist, so I can tell you about who Maitreya is. We believe in a long lineage of Buddhas, as I've covered before, and we believe that Maitreya is the next Buddha. And most Buddhists believe that he hasn't come yet, but the Maitreyists believe that he has come. And Maitreyanism is linked with the sectarian movements like the White Lotus tradition. And they kind of replaced money with Maitreya, but still took this idea of light versus dark. Not in a proper dualist way, because of course they are a Buddhist group, but they took it and kind of took the idea of money as a salvational savior figure and reworked it with Maitreya. And even though Maitreyanism did come from Manichaeism, like I said, it's still a Buddhist group, and it still survives today in many Chinese new religious movements, like the Salvationist religions. They're not that big. Well, they are pretty big, but compared to the other religions in China, they're smaller. But they're still pretty big, and they are mind trained groups. Although they don't say we're mind trainers, they are mind trainers in that they completely believe in the mind trainers' beliefs. Anyway, so this has been kind of a short video just on Manichaeism, that kind of stuff. Just, around that. But anyway, thanks for watching. I'll catch you on the next one. And if there are any Manichaeans watching, please post this video on r/Manichaeism. It'll be really nice. Or just subscribe or like the video. That's what I like. And drop a comment as well. Bye bye.